Greetings, we are in Senior English A, and our objective now is to work with two more sonnets of Shakespeare. We'll be working with Sonnet 2.9 and Sonnet 106 with you on page 275. Page 275. And as I've done in the past, let me give you a quick schemata understanding of how to look at and read these poems. I tried to give you one or two words that kind of allow for you to get a little tie-in. Let me do the same here. It's a good mnemonic as well. For Sonnet 29, let's point out that in Sonnet 29, the speaker of the poem, most likely Shakespeare, says that when things start going really, really crummy, really bad, that he can think about his girl and everything all of a sudden is okay. One of the interesting things about this poem is it tells us that the greatest writer who ever lived, Shakespeare, had bad hair days. Had days when things were not going so well. He had doubts about his own ability. Sonnet 106, previous descriptions of handsome guys, beautiful women, only anticipated the beauty of his girl. Okay? In other words, everything that came before my girl was simply getting ready for the drop-dead gorgeous girl I have. Okay? 106, Sonnet 106. With that in mind now, let's spend a few minutes and let's exegete first Sonnet 29. Okay? So you should be reading with me now on page 275. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, happily I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Just look at the last line. Just look at the last line and identify the iambic pentameter. That then I scorn to change my state with kings. Do you hear it? Do you see it? That then I scorn to change my state with kings. One more time. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Do you see it? For your notes. 2B observation. This is, and Shakespeare loved these, this is a when, then sonnet. Okay? When, blah, 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 blah. When, blah, 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 blah. Then something happens. So if you see the poem that way, it helps a lot. Let's take a look at it. He says, when in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state. He says, put it in your own words, when I feel I'm totally what? Totally alone. Nobody else cares. Nobody else gives me the time of day. He says, and trouble, look at the adjective, deaf heaven. He prays, but what? Yeah, God doesn't hear. He's deaf. God is deaf, right? Deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate. He says, when I wish I could be like one more rich in hope. He's got no hope. Featured like him with friends possessed. Why is he sad? He looks around and he says, other people have lots of friends. I got no friends. I got nobody that cares for me. Look at the next one. Desiring this man's art and that man's scope. Are you ready for this? The cat that wrote Romeo and Juliet, that wrote Hamlet, that wrote Macbeth, believed he wasn't a very good writer. He says, when I get sad and I wish that I could be a great writer like other people who I know. Right? He says, when I wish that I had a man's scope or vision, with that look what he says, I most enjoy contented least. The thing he loves to do is write, and yet he's not content when he does it. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, line 10, there's the shift, there's the then. Happily, I think on thee, the girl. And then my state, like to the lark, the songbird in the morning, at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. It's a simple poem. When I get really bummed and sad, all I have to do to pull myself out of the black hole is what? Think of my girl, right? Then he says it in a rhymed couplet. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. He says, I would rather have my girl than all of the money and power of being a king. Okay? Simple love poem. Sonnet 106 I'll not spend as much time with. I've already kind of told you. He's going to celebrate his girl's beauty, and he's going to say that that which came before was kind of in many ways a precursor of his own girl. Let's look at it. Sonnet 106. When in the chronicle of wasted time I see descriptions of the fairest wights, and beauty making beautiful old rhyme in praise of ladies dead and lovely knights, then in the blazon of sweet beauty's best, of hand, of foot, of lip, of eye, of brow, I see their antique pen would have expressed even such a beauty as you, master, now. So all their praises are but prophecies of this our time, all you prefiguring. And for they looked but with divining eyes, they had not skill enough your worth to sing. For we, which now behold these present days, have eyes to wonder, but lack tongues to praise. Everything that came before, he says, was that's a key word, prefiguring, a getting ready for the beauty, the woman who comes. And this is interesting, a 3B observation. Students have sometimes said that when they go back and they look at what's constituted a beautiful girl from an earlier time, they will say, you know, she's not as attractive, or a good-looking guy, supposed good-looking guy, you know, doesn't look kind of like the same. Question for 3B, jot it down in your notes. Do you think the definition of beauty changes over time, beautiful people? Do you think it changes over time? I've had students that say, dude, I was like looking at my mom or my dad's annual, and the person who was voted the best looking person, they were like, you know, royalty at homecoming or something like that. And when I looked, I have to admit, today, that person wouldn't be considered that good looking. But back in the day, was considered the best looking person at school. Do you think beauty changes over time? And what do you think today's beautiful people will be considered in the future? I mean, according to this argument, there will be a day when people look at Angelina Jolie and say, ugh. No kidding, that's the point we're making. When people will look at Brad Pitt and go, what was wrong with him? He doesn't look very good. That's the point we're making, right? Hey, if you've ever looked at, for example, one of those old pictures of a guy who has all that facial hair, those goofy looking mustaches and all that, and you go, dude, what was up with the facial hair? See the same game getting played. I'm with you now on Sonnet 130 on 278. Now this one is a really famous poem of Shakespeare's. Let's look at it together. There's two ways to read Sonnet 130. One way is Shakespeare, the speaker of the sonnet, is going to jack his girl by saying she ain't very good looking. Okay? Sonnet 130. There's another reading of this poem that says Shakespeare's kind of making fun, in some ways, of all of the love poetry written by both him and other people, where, like bad country music lyrics, girls are equated with all of this crazy stuff of beauty, okay? Let's take a look at the poem and see what he says. My mistress eyes, are you with me? I'm on page 278. My mistress eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black hairs grow on her head. I've seen roses damask red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love is rare, as any she belied, with faults compare. Now, this is an interesting poem, like I said, because on the first glance, it can look like he's messing or jacking with his girl. Notice all the body parts that he talks about his girl, and notice what it is that he says about his girl, beginning with her eyes. Notice, my girl's eyes, nothing like the sun. Poets had said, for example, that their girl's eyes are like the sun. He goes, yeah, my girl's eyes not like the sun. In other words, her eyes are not that amazing or that beautiful. Notice, coral is far more red than her lips red. Her lips are not that amazing. She doesn't have the beautiful red lips, coral red lips. Notice, if snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. We find out something about Shakespeare's day. The most beautiful women were considered beautiful because they were pale, pale white, their skin. Like they'd never been out in the sun at all. This was considered beautiful back then. Only he says his girl, she's all brown and stuff. That is to say, she's not all pale. So, to that degree, she doesn't measure up to this notion of drop-dead gorgeous. Look at the next line. If hairs be wires, black hairs grow on her head. In other words, she doesn't have much very beautiful hair, right? Notice the next one. I've seen roses damask red and white, but no such roses see on her cheeks. What's that one mean? Yeah, some women have this beautiful thing in their, right, in their cheeks, this red. She ain't got any of this in her cheeks. In other words, she's not very pretty face. She doesn't have much for a face. Keep going. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. That's an interesting word, reeks, which rhymes with cheeks. What's he say about his girl's breath? Yeah, not so good. Dude, you could like use a Tic Tac. You need a Tic Tac, okay? That kind of thing. Keep going, right? I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. What's he say about her voice? Yeah, the quality of her voice ain't like beautiful music, okay? Right? I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. When she walks, she's kind of clumsy. She's not the most graceful when she walks. She doesn't have a beautiful killer walk. And at this point you might think, whoa, 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 he's kind of like jacking on his girl, saying all these things. She's not very beautiful. She's not very pretty. She's not very this. She's not very that. And yet, look at his rhymed couplet might have saved him. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied, with faults compare. Put it in your own words. What does he say at the end of this sonnet about his girl? Even though she's not drop dead gorgeous, even though she's not the most amazing woman, even though her breath sometimes is a little bit one of these, what does he say at the very end of the poem? And yet what? What would you say, Mr. Drake? What does he say about her? And yet what?
He says that he still loves her.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though she's not stunning, he says, I think I love her more because she's average, because she's normal. It is her normality that I find so attractive. In other words, I don't need her to be drop dead gorgeous. I just need her to be who she is. Jot down at 3B. What are your thoughts about this? Do you think girls, women, like to be told, you're the best looking girl in the whole world? Or do they rather prefer honesty? You know what? You're average, but I love you for that. What do you think, Miss Herrera? Do you think girls that were in high school want to hear more, you're the best looking girl in the whole high school? Or would they rather be told, even though you're not the best looking girl in the whole high school, you're the girl for me? Which do you think most girls would rather hear, the first or the second? Really? You think the second? Why? Do you think that girls, if they're told you're the best looking girl in the whole high school, think the guy is lying? What do you think, Barnard? Girls, you would think honesty's more important. Let's write that down. Sonnet 130 says, when you're dealing with girls, guys and girls, guys and girls, honesty is better. Just be honest and tell her, dude, your breath reeks. Mr. Bryant, do you think that girls want to hear about their flaws? No, Mr. Bryant says, no, girls do not want to hear about their flaws. Is it a good idea, do you think, Mr. D, is to sit down with the girl and say, take out your little notebook and say, I'm going to tell you 4 things you need to do to be better looking. Do you think that's a... Ooh, Denise. Mr. Diaz says that is not a good plan to say to the girl, take out your notebook, I'm going to give you some pointers. Do you think girls really want honesty from guys? Hernandez says no.
Certain points.
You want to be
certain places.
Whoa, what do you mean certain points? Which points do you think? Do they want honesty about their looks? No. Hernandez says girls want us to say, guys to say what they want to hear.
Exactly.
What about guys? Do guys want honesty?
No.
Oh, Hernandez says he doesn't care. Well, we can fight that one out later.